Down here, San Antonio Bay, Panther Point, Panther Lake, Swan Lake area, back in that area, all the way down to Cedar and Twin. You got great little back lake mouths that dump out into the main part of San Antonio, right here across the shoreline. Cedar's a terrific little area, a little cove that's back in there, and then you got Twin that's just right down the shoreline from that. We've had some coastal flooding stuff that's gone on the last few days, and that at some point that will begin to roll back out, and the water will recede somewhat, and we'll have our normal tides again. But while that's taking effect, while we still have that coastal flooding, if you have the opportunity to make this run that's down in here, whether you're coming from the Rockport area or Seadrift area or Port O'Connor area, whatever, uh, come fish these particular areas. This is a great high tide place like that. When you get that amount of water this pushed into these areas, it really helps fish. They get more access to areas that they probably haven't been in a while. So it's a great opportunity for us to fish these areas that may or may not have some fish in some time. So bait has not been an issue whatsoever. We've had tons and tons of bait up and down the shorelines, these little creeks that dump out into the main system, the little coves, just like up in Twin. Twin he can get really skinny on you at times based on what the water levels are. Fish are showing up on the outside. You've got a great amount of grass that's pushing out on these shoreline edges like this. So uh, you don't have to just stick to the cove areas or back inside these little things. Great places to fish. You've got little cuts and little guts and little drops and edges that are in some of these things. They're real subtle. If you wait them a lot, you know where these particular places are. It's a great place for fish to hold or be around, as long as they have that bait source that's in there, which that has been the case. But start working your outer edges of your shorelines. These fish are, our water levels and temps are pushing upwards consistently now. We're upper 70s, low 80s in this, and this really kind of helps push fish toward the shell and toward that hard packed sand area. And when you can find that sand, and then you can start finding the grass in and around that, whether it be just really strong grass potholes and packs in big areas like that, or just a little bit of satellite grass here and there. Those are great places for those fish to hold around that. So some of the things that we've been throwing primarily, we're transitioning into a new moon. That'll be coming up really fast this coming week, probably latter part of the week. So your majors and minors will be a key factor. Again, once you have that new moon phase, and we've kind of finished out our wild card or transition days, if you will, lots of the smaller baits like the burner shad or the knock and tail or even the marker 54 and the smaller version of shrimp have all been very productive for us. But when you start getting into the new moon phase, then you can kind of upgrade your profile size, make it a little bit bigger, throw it, and give yourself a little bit better chance of possibly catching some a little bit more quality fish as far as size goes. The Double D has been a great one. The supermodel in the down south, primarily in your more clearish, not so much super dark flavors, but white ice has been good for us. Texas or Twisted Tea has been very good for us. Big Papa Pearl, all those have been great summer or springtime baits as we move into the summertime. And those will just continue to transition. Another one's been Magic Grass. Haven't thrown Magic Grass in a little bit, but as we get into the spring, it's been more and more productive for us. So just another flavor to add to your arsenal in your wade box when you're out there. Again, we're still throwing 16th ounce jig heads. Still not into a 1/8 ounce, and most likely will not be unless the situation kind of dictates to us that that's what we need to have. But most of the fish that we're finding are still in that waist deep or less water, so having a heavier jig head doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you just really just want that bait to flow down there like that, because it drops down into the grassy areas if you're fishing those. So if you can't control that descent of that bait, then that's something you want to change back to as a 16th ounce. So just be patient with that thing. Let the baits do it work for you. Let it flow down through that water column into these areas, and you can really prospect these areas and find these fish that are pushing back into these areas and out on the outer edges. You can work this thing all the way back down toward, as you head back toward the first chain of islands in this area here, if you want to make that kind of run there. But again, great amount of grass that's pushed in some of these areas. We're locating fish up and down these areas. Just pay attention what the tides are going to be doing, because again, we've had some flooding stuff that's gone on for us. It's allowed us to get back into some of these areas that we haven't typically been looking in. But once that water starts to roll back out, it'll give us other opportunities in other particular areas. Again, majors and minors, new moons coming. Have all kinds of different options for yourself that's out there. Make sure you work around those majors and minors, because that's when, again, it's been the most productive time frame for us. All along here from Allen's, all on the outer shoreline. Man, all the grass areas that are all up and down this area. You've got back lake mouths that dump out into the main system, into the Aransas Bay. Walk up into those areas. Again, we've had the coastal flooding that's gone on, so it's allowed us to be in some areas typically we probably would not be, because it gets super skinny back in some of these areas. If you fished back up in this, you know this. But when you get extra water in there, it opens up opportunities for us. And some of these back lake areas have been very good because of that. It pushes fish further back, gives you opportunities back in these areas, but primarily been focusing out here on the outer edges, on the fronts of St. Joe. Grass, plenty of bait working in here. Just get you on a line. You're starting to see this rafting bait that's starting to come in here, and menhaden starting to show up. Get those jacks that are running out there. You can see that menhaden just running away from everything. So it's really starting to light up out here. I would give it another week and a half, maybe 2 weeks solid, and it's going to be really good out here on the shorelines. But fish are showing up there now. So trout, redfish, flounder have all been caught out of here on the outer shorelines and all these edges like this. All we're doing, we're just working thigh deep to waist deep water. Just kind of based on what we're doing early wise. Get up early, up on the shoreline, fish that edges up there close to that, and see if you can see some fish that are working there. Again, top water bait's been pretty good up there early. Somewhat sun's still starting to pop a little bit, but we're throwing the top waters up against the edges like that. We're throwing, again, 16th ounce jig heads, throwing the burner shad, throwing the knock and tail lures in assorted flavors in both of those. The Marker 54 jerk shrimp, it's been very good. Again, just kind of freelining those things up and down these edges like that. You can see the potholes. Just work it. Take your time with it. In our transition days, we had some tough days. So that's just kind of part of the fishing process. That's why they call them the wild card days, because you get all different types of actions and activities and opportunities that are up and down that. But be patient with it. The fish are in there. They're here. They're starting to show up, and we're getting good quality fish on top of that. So, and that's another great thing. We still have the new regs that are in place. The 17 to 23 fish thing that still applies to us, and we're starting to see dividends from that as we work these areas coming out of the wintertime into our spring. Now we're fixing to get into our late spring pattern, summertime patterns coming. There's some edges out here that's got some shell that's on it, so we're finding fish in and around those areas too. So that's all great news to know that, because it just opens up more and more water for us to fish and where we need to locate and find fish. So that's the great thing about the St. Joe from the Allen's Bight area. You've got great points that are down there, and you got the great satellite grass that's in those areas. You've got good hard-packed sand that's in these areas, and these fish are showing up on top of that. As you get back, as you kind of head toward the Mott area, you got some shell and some edges that are on that area side as well, mixed in with the grass. So it's just giving us lots of opportunity to find and catch these fish in and around these areas. Again, finding bait is not a problem. Making your bait stand out in and amongst all the bait that's in the area is that's the trick to it. So that's the great thing about fishing with artificials, is you're really angling when you do this. So work all these different baits, pay attention to what they're wanting, how they're acting, to what size, profile, and color, and everything like that. Again, majors and minors are our main things that we're focusing in and around on. So make sure you incorporate that into your fishing day. Up here on the outer edge of the North Pass, as you head into Mission Bay, these outer shorelines are starting to light up with fish. They're starting to have, fish are showing up for us there, and we're getting a lot of different kinds. We're getting the trout, we're getting the redfish, occasional flounder, some black drum ever so often. We'll catch those. Again, I've mentioned in the past, you can catch black drum on artificial, although it's not consistent. The main thing that we've caught those on has been little johns, but they eat it. So ever so often we'll get a surprise fish, and it's a black drum, so it's always a pleasant surprise when that does take place. But yeah, you can catch them on that. Back down here, again, this whole shoreline, as you all the way head down toward Turtle Pen, if you want to work that whole thing, find you an area, get you about a 200, 300 yard area that you can work and fish those areas. You're going to locate and find a fish. Copano Reef out here, there's fish that are showing up on it. All this area in here. The main thing about Copano is you might want to pick your days when you're going to try to fish these open areas like this, and it's got super rough as far as, high winds that come blowing in here, and we're getting into our springtime pattern, pretty heavy. So these areas like this, great to hold them, but sometimes it can be difficult when you got 20, 30 mile an hour winds that are coming across that bay like that. So just make sure you take that into account if you want to fish the reefs out there. Up in Mission on both sides, we're working the points on either side of the mouth here of North Pass. You got nice wading areas that are in this place. You've got good hard packed sand. You got shale. You've got all that kind of stuff that comes into play for you. You've got a little bit more mud and some grass that's pushed back as you go back toward Mission River. That area, we've had the tremendous amount of rains over the last couple of weeks. So, you're getting that tea-stained look as that river flows back into Mission Bay, and you got Mission Lake that's back in there that's had some fish in it, and it's wadeable. So again, with our coastal flooding that we've had, it really opens up those particular areas really well. The whole back shoreline in Mission is very wadeable. Lots of opportunity back in there. It's protected back in here. You got the big cliffs down the right-hand side. You can get up against those, but again, in some of these areas, if you go to the right, it gets super soft. So just make sure you're aware of that if you're going to jump out of the boat. Up in the little corners here, you've got shale pads and shale beds that are in there. So that's all that kind of stuff is opened up for us and giving us opportunity. I love getting on the back shoreline where the river dumps out into the bay system, and go down from it and get over to the lake and fish all that area there, up and down it. You're going to locate and find some fish. Again, main things that we've been throwing the down south in purple rain, white ice, twisted tea, big papa, a couple of the other flavors as well. The acid rain, mud minnow have all been very productive for us. Again, it's not been one particular thing that really stood out, but we're pretty much matching what our water clarity is to what our bait is, and we've just been working that, and it's been productive for us. In the knock and tell as well, in both the 4-inch, 3 1/4 inch, and then of course they have the big 5 inches as well. So smoke flavor has been very good for us. The standby, the heavy metal, and the greenback, and then of course Rogue have all been productive flavors for a while. So make sure you have those in there. Redfish have really been really good on the Rogue flavor. So if you've got that and that's what you're really wanting to target, then throw those. More of the firecracker flavor and the burner shad have been very productive for trout. So just make sure that you've got that more clear water that you can fish that in. It doesn't do super good for you if the water's super dirty. So anyhow, again, the lake's been good. The back shoreline's been good. Our weather patterns have been pretty great. Just make sure you continue to pay attention to those, because it's a long run across Copano if you're coming from Copano Bay Bridge or somewhere else. So just make sure you're aware of those, what's going on. Again, majors and minors, main things all the time. Just make sure you're putting yourself in position where you can incorporate that into your fishing day.